Yes. Isn't this splendid? Isn't this splendid with this absolutely atrocious camera? But you know what? As long as it works, right? Eventually I'll get a better laptop, though. I mean, I could do better than this, to be honest. What's going on? So, finally, I did have some visuals today. It was an exceptionally boring day at work, which boredom can be a good thing if used properly, right? If you can actually be very creative with that boredom, right? And I think that holds true for children, right? And that's why so many children don't know what that's like today, uh, because there's always some gadget or distraction kind of throwing them off from their potential creativity, unlike what many of us had in our childhood, which all we had was going outside and being creative with games that we could come up with, doing dumb things. I was like 8 years old. I nearly burned down. Me and my cousin Boris, we nearly burned down our apartment complex in Tucson, Arizona. Just don't ask. But I mean, that's the thing, right? It's that sort of creative, childlike impulse that I think is really part of the divine spark in all of us, which is going to be part of this discussion today, right? Divinity, our own potential, um, us as a family, as one unit, as one organism. And I am speaking a bit randomly right now because I'm just going to wait a few minutes for people to come on. And generally, I'm going to speak about something really interesting that I saw in a visual today, and that is actually what I would describe as the creation of souls. And it was actually very different than what I expected, or what I would normally expect to see how they are created in the singularity of God, right? Good evening. Glad I don't have to interact with people too much at work. I don't either, loyalty. Neither do I, and that's why I'm doing the job that I'm doing. Because I used to be doing the opposite jobs where all I did was talk with people all day. And I'm like, nah, just got to be alone now on my own. It's hard to be at work when 90% of the people are either NPCs or minions. I mean, it's no different where I am, though. Hence the strangeness, the strangeness of the behavior that I've been talking about the last few weeks. That has completely died down now and has seemingly returned to total normalcy for whatever reason, and actually utter boredom, which is okay. I would rather people not act strangely around me. Kind of gives me the creeps. I don't really want that anyway. So people following me and things like that, that's not really something I like. And then online too, just been so quiet and so peaceful, not being bombarded with messages by all these strange people, like it's awesome. It's lovely. I the peace and quiet is a lovely feeling, actually. I'm glad you're always here in my chat, loyalty. It's freaking awesome. Gonna wait a little bit though. Gonna wait a little bit. I don't know. I kind of notice like people show up like for some reason like at the 10-minute mark. I don't know if I want to wait that long though, but that's usually the case. And I was kind of thinking about the whole massive like counteroffensive today in Ukraine, where just in the last 2 days it resulted in the death of like 1,300 Ukrainian troops. Hey, Angel. And I'm like just watching this, and I'm like, then Taiwan tried to shoot down a Chinese drone as well. And I'm like looking at all this, and I'm like, you know what? This wouldn't be happening if we really knew who we are as souls. It really wouldn't be happening. I don't think it would even be possible, actually, if people truly knew who they were. Like all these like despicable acts, they wouldn't be happening. And it's like, Morg, I shared Morg's channel. He had this super interesting video, right? I know some of you guys saw it. Not for me. They are acting really strange. I would definitely love to hear some examples. Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. That sucks. Yeah, so like, Morg's basically talking about like natural stages of, our evolution being like from like the animal state or like the instinctual state to like the state of self-awareness. And these are like epochs or eons of time, right? And then at some point you reach like hyper awareness or like a collective unity consciousness or something. um I don't know like how self-aware we even are at this point, if we're capable of the things that we're doing. Did we really reach that far above the animal state or the instinctual state if we're in such a condition? I mean, I don't know. Like, are we going to jump from this to like a collective? It just seems really sad. Did you hear about how they're going to back to the moon this week? Who's going back to the moon? I think it's to cover up why a certain country keeps bombing the moon. I heard nothing about the moon. Wow, actually, please enlighten me. I They canceled the moon trip, Angel? What is that? There's no way it's Apollo or something. Like, you're not talking about a man mission to the moon, because I would have known about that. You're talking about some Chinese thing or something, right? Or something. Some rocket. Artemis. Okay, Artemis. I did hear about that. Okay. Okay. USA. Interesting. So, okay, but who's bombing the moon though? And for what reason? And we're talking about the real moon, right? And not that fake piece of crap we see in the sky. Yeah. Unmanned. Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, and like speaking of the unmanned aspect of that, like why did like there is some evidence pointing that the whole moon landing thing was fake, because I mean, why haven't we been back there? I mean, this is like the 60s we're talking about. And like they had all those Apollo missions, which were, by the way, a Mandela effect. In my previous reality, there was only like one or two manned missions to the moon. And then in this Mandela affected reality, there's like 17 of them or 15. So that's a Mandela effect on its own. And then for some reason, we haven't been back there for some completely bogus reasons that make no sense. Code for something else. Yeah. Right. It's like, why? Like, if it was doable in the 60s, then it should be a piece of cake today, like you would think, right? Something just is not right about the whole thing. Um, they're suddenly trying to go back with the Artemis, which is strange to me because NASA disbanded under Obama. I didn't even know that they disbanded under Obama. Wow. Huh. Well, it's kind of like all those weird rocket trips with the billionaires, right? Um, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Virgin Atlantic and all these people just trying to create these super ships for whatever reason to get to space as fast as possible. Like the whole thing is just really strange. It's like they have this agenda to get the hell out of here as soon as possible or something. It might be related to this moon thing. I mean, I don't know. So, okay. Orange fuel tank issue, huh? The orange part. At least where I was previously, I suspect I shifted recently. Um, yeah, interesting. Huh. Alrighty. Well, interesting. Reminds me of Trump. Oh yeah, whatever's going on with him, that's gonna be some weird stuff for sure. The whole indictment and everything. It's not looking good for sure. But let's get to the topic of conversation, um, if you guys want. But it has to do with the creation of souls. So I want to know what you guys think about this actually, because it's really interesting to me. Because basically, like I've always seen, like God or the source is like this, just basically like this infinite battery, right? That's just endlessly multiplying and creating and replicating itself like endlessly, like some organism that is ever expanding and cannot stop expanding. And but what I saw today was kind of different than that, actually. So even though I do think there's some truth to that, there is an element of the source being like an organism, and like each of us are his cells, right? We're each a working part of the entire organism, right? And I've always, like, I've talked about this many times on my channel, where it's like a body, right? Like it actually literally functions like a human body, where I equated like each universe to like a cell, and each mitochondria to like a galaxy, and a solar system to like atoms, and so on and so forth. And they all kind of work in cohesion together to create this functioning body, which is the functioning body of God. I think souls are created through two demigods making love in the ethereal. Well, guess what? What you just said is really important, actually, because that's sort of what I saw. Um, I wouldn't necessarily call it making love, but it was like some reproductive process that was taking place. Okay, where I'm in like the white mist, I'm in the ethereal plane, and I see these two blue orbs. These two like more advanced souls, I guess. And what they're doing is that they're dancing around each other. So like they're one is spinning clockwise and the other is spinning counterclockwise. And every time they spin, they keep going faster and faster. And this pattern starts to emerge in between them. And there's like several distinct kind of sequences taking place. So some of the patterns kind of look like DNA strands that emerge in between the two, but they're more like clumps, like they're more like bubbles instead of like actual strands. And then in between these like strands are what look like symbols. They kind of resemble musical notes. So it would be like equidistant musical notes and patterns. And then in between the two, what's closing the pattern and the symbols on either side are actually these geometric shapes. And they're sort of holding everything together in between. And so the dance, they actually get closer and closer together. And as they merge with each other, the two blue orbs, Sanskrit, interesting. I don't know much about it, but that's cool. Tell me more, please. Um, as they get closer together, um, then a beam of golden light actually emerges from the source itself, and fuses all of that information together. So you have the geometric shapes the sort of DNA like strands, and then the musical symbols. And then that golden light sort of shapes all of that into this perfectly circular, but completely like clear, transparent orb. And this transparent orb is like a sort of baby, right? That these two blue advanced orbs basically created. And the golden light is basically a representation of the infinite potential of the light itself, right? And then from what I understood, the geometric shapes are uh, that is um, that is the consciousness sort of pattern, or like the sort of characteristics that that soul will hold in that sort of mathematical sequence. And then the DNA or strands are what that particular soul is going to magnetize to or attach to in the material planes. Basically, those sort of bubble patterns, what is going to be attracted to for the purposes of its own development and evolution. And then the musical notes are basically the clearest form of its character type. Okay, it's its clearest form of expression. So you have basically three different types of expressions contained within this essentially blank soul that is literally just like a seed, right? It's actually its only potential at this point. It is hardly even self-aware at this point. It would have to basically go experience something that is akin to like a life, for example, in order to develop and grow those three patterns and characteristics so that it can become more of what it is, like, a seed sprouting. Okay, look at the list of Sanskrit letters and numbers. It's visually very much like DNA strands and musical notes. Is it really? Wow, Wes. I have to look at that. That is seriously freaking awesome. And Sanskrit is ancient Indian, right? If I'm not mistaken, or like an ancient Hindu language. Emily, actually, Emily wanted to call me, and you're totally welcome to if they could hear it on the phone somehow. Uh, I think I have it on silent though, but sex is so primitive and just doesn't compare to merging or spirit. It's so true, loyalty. And I've talked about this before on my channel, so I'm not embarrassed to talk about it, but I've experienced that sort of intimacy in astral planes and in higher realms as well. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't compare. It's much more deep. It's much more personal, and it's much more spiritual. So I could definitely more than agree with you on that. Show brought to you by Daniel. Hey, oh, Dan's here. What's up? Oh, wait, you did just call. Hey, guys, actually, Emily just called. So if you don't mind, let me get my phone. I'm hoping. All right, I'm hoping you guys will be able to hear her on my crappy phone. I don't, as you know, my sort of the way I stream is like extremely old school, right? I don't have anything fancy going on here whatsoever, guys. But let's see if you can hear her. Please let me know.
Hi, Murphy.
Hi.
Hey, Murphy. Morris says hi. Jeff says hi.
Hi.
Hi, audience.
Hi. So you're calling me right on the live stream, which I think is awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome. I didn't know that was what we were doing, but since that's what we're doing, we'll roll with it. I was just calling to say hello, because we were with Jeff, and try to figure out a time when the three of us can all do a show together, since Jeff and I normally do shows on Friday and you're not available. But since we're here with you on the live stream, let's play.
Let's okay, it seems like people say they could hear you though, so that's good.
All right.
You're
live from Grants Pass, Oregon.
Oh, you're all the way in Oregon, huh?
Yep.
Oh wow, I've been to Southern Oregon. There's some really nice areas, some nice waterfalls over there. You should check out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you're talking about God's creation of souls and the enigma of life.
Yes, that's
All
right.
right. We were hearing you talk about DNA and Sanskrit letters. The Sanskrit letters are very magical looking.
Well, I didn't know anything about that until Wes just told me. Actually, that the what did he say exactly? That Sanskrit looks like DNA strands and musical notes. So that's pretty mind blowing to me. I got to look into that.
Have you read The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby?
No.
So you and also Wes was that his name who said the thing about the Sanskrit letters?
Yeah.
So it's an amazing book. It's very short. It's about 20 years old, and I always wanted to read it because I like Jeremy Narby, but I didn't get around to reading it till this year. And it definitely does deep dive and study on all of the things that resemble DNA in terms of the symbology from ancient and indigenous cultures, as well as like artifacts and art and whatnot. And what he says, what he comes away sort of thinking is that everything in nature is constantly broadcasting what it is. So it's broadcasting, like DNA is like a low level, low frequency radio transmission that is telling you what something is, right? And so for Sanskrit letters to resemble DNA makes sense because Sanskrit is a language, and language is what you use to tell someone who you are and what you are.
Okay.
Whatnot, right? And so Jeremy Narby is basically saying that like all of nature has DNA and it's constantly broadcasting at a low level outside of your regular ability to perceive it, all of the information about itself. And when you defocalize your attention, it allows you to tune into that broadcast and learn what things are and therefore how to use them and how to treat them.
Interesting. Well, you know how. So you're saying it's constantly broadcasting what it is, but you know what's fascinating about that is that let's just say like if you start off as like a very like simple soul with a couple of notes, and then like through experience you become like an entire symphony, right? And then that symphony begins to broadcast what it is.
Yep.
So that and then the whole universe hears that beautiful symphony of what you've become. Huh.
And when you think about it, like one of the things that I really sink into thinking about a lot, if for no other reason than just getting a different perspective, is if what we think of as nature or things that are organic are just a much more primitive or previous form of technology that has had all these years to develop character. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, go into a neighborhood that has all these cute, quaint, charming old craftsman homes or something. You're like, oh, this neighborhood has character.
Yep.
You go into a neighborhood where all the houses are like brand new and look like each other. You're like, these are like, you know, some, you know, cookie cutter, robotic, whatever kind of thing.
They have no life in them. Yeah, they're like dead, hollow shells. Yeah.
Right? But what if, look, everything started out like that? Like I've talked about this before, but like during one mushroom trip, the trees told me that they're just like 5G towers, except for they're more cultured. They are beautiful and functional. They broadcast frequencies for all kinds of things. They provide oxygen for us to breathe, and they're pretty to look at. And that 5G towers are just like a really new, mechanized, basic technology that hasn't had any time to develop its character.
Right. Well, they're trying to like basically place us back to base consciousness, essentially, right? Okay.
Yes.
So that makes sense. What if that it's partially responsible for some of the chaos and wars that we're seeing now?
100%, right?
Yeah.
So like you see that, like we've all seen those 5G towers that are disguised as trees. They try and make them look like trees.
Yeah, I have them right here, right next to me.
Right. So like eventually, like plants and vines and stuff like that will start to grow up on them and around them and twist themselves around them, just like birds are attracted to telephone wires.
Yep.
And they will look like trees. And I don't know that trees that we think of as natural trees didn't just copy some technology that is used with nature prior to it and start replicating like 100 monkey thing, right? And so when it's at that base level, it's like busting out a frequency that people aren't used to. It's like a young person who you give a gun to and doesn't know what to do with it. And over time, it becomes one with the quote unquote nature, which might just be earlier technology, and begins to behave in a more modified and responsible fashion.
Interesting. That is one of the most interesting things I've ever heard. Let me get to the chat for a second. So Loyalty says all Eastern medicine comes from Sanskrit. It was some of the first language ever written so that those who weren't telepathic could also learn. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
That's the broadcasting information, right? The telepathic people or the shamans, in the case of Jeremy Narby's research, are able to pick it up straight from the nature, but the other people have to learn from someone symbolizing and transcribing that nature.
Yep. And Dan is asking, I wonder if the Earth itself radiates a certain wave into the universe. Oh, it definitely does. Oh, Fabian, hi, how are you? Fabian's here. Definitely, Dan. No doubt about it. I think that's part of the Schumann resonance and other frequencies that the Earth emits. I think that there's a point in the universe that doesn't know that we're here, except for maybe unevolved people like us. But overall, the consciousness of the universe is aware of us for sure. Hey, birds, I think like scalar technology, so are crickets. Oh, like birds, the whole bird theory. Interesting. Yeah, we actually talked about that with Emily before. With this,
the birds aren't real thing. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the birds aren't real. There's definitely something funny with the birds, but you're talking about crickets, and like you can hear. I don't know if you can hear, but where we are right now, Jeff like lives out in a pretty place. There's crickets everywhere, and where we live in Austin, there are cicadas.
Oh yeah.
That provide this background hum, right? That like possibly is a frequency that supports a lot of the technologies of nature.
Wow. Okay. Well, I just don't notice many of them around anymore in general. Like crickets have basically disappeared over the last few years. Like they would be nonstop like every summer. Like I don't know, 20 years ago. Today, like I would hear them for a few days and then they would be gone. It's just like a hit or miss sort of thing. It's not consistent like it used to be.
That's because of you. That's because of you. It's because you're a very gifted traveler and you're not in the same place every day.
Interesting.
Right? And that might be a marker for you as to which level of reality you're in. Are you in one that has like a higher organic definition to it, or are you in like a newer copy of the simulation or a newer projection or like a newer screenplay?
Yeah.
Right? You have a very like an amazing gift for noticing the small differences of people. You're like Philip K. Dick.
Well, Dan confirms this because we both live in San Diego, and he says, yeah, that the crickets are just not around much anymore. And he's lived here his whole life, a lot longer than I have too. But he's also asking you a question, Emily.
Yep.
Is this a mind over matter scenario?
Which scenario?
Yeah, which scenario, Dan? Maybe he's talking about like the way that we're able to perceive which. No, I don't know.
The other thing about San Diego is the amount of military activity that is there.
Oh yeah.
Right? That a lot of the military bases broadcast frequencies that wouldn't allow you to hear the cicadas over it necessarily anyway.
Oh
right?
yeah.
You go back and watch the TV series Fringe, and like was it the first or second season? There's an episode called Project Elephant, right? You got the name of the episode?
I never seen it.
And they were broadcasting like such a frequency that it was making people see people different than they were.
ELM waves loyalty is saying. Is it ELM waves? Like Charlie, look out for Charlie talks about.
Right. There's all kinds of look out for Charlie's fascinating. I have him on the books for another show.
Nice.
But like we've had a couple of really good ones. But yes, there's like all of these weird things that you can do with the frequencies that distort what people hear, what people see, right? Like literally, like create almost an alternate version of reality just based on which people are picking what up.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, who knows how much our perception is being altered, and from person to person, we shouldn't assume that what we are seeing subjectively is the same thing that other people are seeing and experiencing. I think a lot of times it's not.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Like, I mean, don't you even sometimes have a different memory of some event than like your brother or your sister or your parents?
Oh yes, I do. Yeah, actually talked about that pretty recently with some family members who seem to not remember something that I remember as clear as day. So what Dan meant is what? So
okay,
you?
I see what he says. Okay. So
oh, you see the chat, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, did Egyptians, Sumerians, and older advanced culture have mind over matter to control physical and natural objects?
Ah.
On some level, yes, but they were also expert at using programmable matter.
Yeah.
Like, no, they could imbue their consciousness or their intent into, and which ones they couldn't.
Right.
Right.
And Fabian says, just cancel out all the negative thinking. Being alone in nature will detach from anything human. I know Fabian does that a lot, and it seems to be very helpful, which is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but no, I think that's what was going on with a lot of the ancient cultures. They were much clearer than we are on what sort of modality or what things were the best for imbuing with certain properties. We're not good at that anymore. It's like one of those things that we knew how to do that we lost because technology made us not have to do it anymore.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's what I think about a lot of these, superhero series like X-Men and all that, Spider-Man and all those things. I think they're trying to show us what we used to be or the abilities we used to have in like some kind of almost comical type way. But if you saw the newest Spider-Man, it was all about multiverses and creating realities. The whole scenario was super bizarre and like kind of advanced for just some Spider-Man movie. Have you seen it? It came out last year, I think.
I haven't seen Spider-Man, but I've seen X-Men, and I've seen we've seen some. I've watched that. What was that one we just watched that not that long ago? Doctor Strange.
Well, Doctor Strange was he was a big character in the Spider-Man movie too, and he was the one that was altering all the universes and creating all these realities. It was super interesting, actually.
And then I don't watch a ton of movies because I fall asleep, but like Jupiter Ascending had a lot of that kind of stuff in it as well, with the various like reality creations. And then what was the one with the Loki?
I haven't seen that. Yeah, I haven't seen that one though. Yeah.
So, Bertie, I was just calling to say hi. I'm going to left to Jeff, so I'm going to hop off. But I'm glad I got to chat with you for a few minutes and say hi to your audience. And when I get back to Austin, I'm going to call you and we'll set up the show with me and you and Jeff.
Oh, sweet. Yes, thank you. Well, this is awesome. Great timing for a call, so thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right.
Guys. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Yeah. Well, that was pretty cool. Oh, wow. Okay. That never happened before, so that was a pleasant surprise. I hope you guys, obviously were able to hear it, right? I mean, I know it's probably pretty quiet, but I'm sure you're able to hear it, right? Just confirm one more time. Yeah, the Egyptians built the pyramids to send energy to an insect-type ET group in the Orion version. Yes, Yes, the insects. I've seen them too. I've seen visions of them. The praying mantis, like whatever they are, kind of creepy weirdos. Um, they are playing a big role on this planet. They still are. They're connected with Osiris. They're doing some sort of harvest operation here where they're siphoning energy to create more of their own kind or birth more of their own kind, or what this energy is, I don't know. But they're definitely multiplying here for whatever reason. That's cool that you could hear her. Yeah, Wes, you should check. If you don't know Emily Moyer's channel, definitely check it out. She has like some of the most interesting guests you could ever imagine. I've been on her show several times, and I've met her in person too. Really cool lady. So definitely check her out. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about. All right, yeah. So the Sanskrit, I gotta look into the Sanskrit, right? So mental energy, and that it's very nice to see you, Fabian. I haven't seen you in a while. Very cool that you're here. Thank you. Um, so yeah, and then speaking of the musical notes, like the common string theory and quantum physics, I think they're basically playing off of that. What these supposed strings are these, they're either the DNA strands or the musical notes, basically, on a subatomic level. And speaking of a subatomic level, I think in the micro level is where like the deepest mysteries of existence are. Um, the deeper you go, way beyond subatomic, I think you can find things that are energy signatures that could potentially pinpoint the reason for God's existence. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, uh, but I think the infinite singularities, one of its primary goals is to discover its own existence or the reason for its existence. And it does that through this, endless cycle of splintering and replicating, multiplying. I don't like saying creating clones. That's just a stretch. That sounds really weird. It's not really creating clones of itself. I think that the light is creating children of itself, right? So where it's children, right? God's children, I think is a much better way of looking at it. And then those children create other children like the blue. So I think we literally have a spiritual mother and father, whether these are angels or other beings that have birthed us into existence from the source itself. Um, they're part of your soul family, right? Um, that you're not necessarily existing here with them on earth necessarily, but they could be your infinite mother and father, for example. The reason is insects had some sort of cataclysm in the world, which is also happening right now because time isn't linear. Exactly. Okay. Just thought of Interstellar. I did see that movie. All those chords of time, dimensions he saw. Yeah. Oh, I remember that ending scene was so trippy where he was like in that room. I don't remember the movie that well, but it was that girl. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a few years. Good to see you and be here. Good timing and happening. Yeah, that's right. Cataclysm on their planet caused by some event. Godparents. Well, I mean, it sounds funny, but like it kind of makes sense to me. Just like, as above, so below, like we have parents here, and then we grow up, and many of us have our own children, and so on and so forth. And a sort of similar replicating process takes place in the heavens where there's, a much greater soul family. And that's what soul families are, right? Like you have, the mother and father, and then the greater family that's part of a greater like soul, like a greater symphony, right? Like there's you as a singular symphony, but then there's an entire family that is like the whole choir, right? Or it's the whole orchestra, and you're all playing your own unique sort of melody, right? And all of that originating from this infinite power source, which um, depends on its own existence by replication and and materializing in realms such as this, and internalizing that, and then expanding outward again in this infinite loop that never started. And then you have the Satan paradox of duality accompanying that paradox and this existence. And what I think is on the subatomic level that is being searched out is I think he's looking for another singularity, such as himself or itself. I don't want to say him or her. He's hunting out another infinite life source, infinite light source that could be sort of trapped or existing in the deepest aspects of self. So even though, as far as we know, God is all there is, the light is all there is, and everything exists within it, I think that the light is trying to search for other forms of existence outside itself. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I think that's actually one of the primary goals of manifestations in the form, to search for that, because through the replication process into making smaller fragments of itself, the light does actually kind of create a sort of subatomic version of itself, right? And if it creates that smaller version of itself, then that smaller version of itself could look into even smaller versions like cells or atoms, which could then go further and further and further into some really deep. It's kind of like the 13th dimension, right? The archaic realms and the hunt for the real substrata or the foundation of existence, right? It's sort of a similar idea, except Lucifer or Satan is looking to destroy all of existence. The infinite light is trying to discover the origins of all existence, or for its own existence. And we're sort of part of that process. Yeah, it was a deep movie. It was definitely. I got to see it again, though. I mean, I probably saw it like 4 years ago. With the Webb telescope out in space, it is an endless mirror in the universe. The micro scale is only based on this perception of man. Yeah, well, that's the point. Actually, yeah, you made a good point. Like when in my NDE, like the light definitely did not have anything resembling any sort of spatial dimension. Like you could not tell what was up, what was down, what was left, what was right. It was infinitely expansive and infinitely condensed. It was infinitely large as it was infinitely small. There was no context to where you were located or what it was. It just was, right? And that's the interesting thing about it. Okay. So the soul family is a trip. Many of mine, unfortunately, the ones that chose darkness, are in a mental prison, which makes things so much more difficult. And yeah, I just heard about this really interesting NDE where this guy is actually describing these bubbles that are created, and each of these bubbles is like a universe, and some of these universes like have free will, and then they choose love, right? And then they expand and they become more evolved, right? And then there's other universes that go dark, right? And then they become darker and darker. And it's like there's always this rebalancing trying to take place between these two opposing forces, between free will, right? I'm not even going to get into free will right now. That's a whole nother cookie that I can't get into right now, because free will exists depends on what perspective you're in, I think. Bubble universe, they beget each other, yeah. Or like, yeah, the bubble universe, eternal recurrence, or, one universe is born out of another universe, and it's like this weird reciprocal relationship where the end of another is the beginning of a new one, which is what Morg talked about in that that stream I shared of his. And if you didn't see it, you should. That was one of his best. Really interesting stuff this guy talks about. Similar to I don't know. Let's go on for a few more minutes because I'm kind of getting a bit out of it. This is like really mind-boggling stuff. Let's go on for 5 more minutes, guys. Any last thoughts on this stuff, or love to hear what you think is the purpose for God fractalizing himself or splitting itself into various characters of itself, which turns into us, who end up going places and exploring things. I mean, is it loneliness? Is it boredom? I mean, then someone made a really great point. Actually, a couple of people made a really great point earlier when I shared the other video, and that one person said that how can you experience love unless you create subjective aspects of yourself, right? How can you experience that love truly if you don't separate, right? And you don't create another to express that love to. So, all you are is this one infinite light, right? So how could all you know is love, but how can you truly express that love? And actually, I heard similar, what's that guy's name? Neil Donald Walsh, I think. I read his books a long time ago, but he did talk about similar stuff to that, where that is kind of the purpose, where, that's the best way to express love subjectively from one to another division, right? 1 + 2 + 3, instead of you just alone in a cave by yourself, just your whole life, just sitting in a cave, right? It's kind of hard to express love to other people when there's nobody around, right? I do think the creator is looking for another like them, or seeking to manifest a being like them. It's like they're extremely low. I think so. I don't know why. I just really think that is the case too. There is some sort of deep, like sort of like a science experiment element to all of this that I feel that has. What I'm trying to say is that there is that element of love, right? There's those purposes, but there's actually deeper layers of that purpose, and even more deeper layers of that. And it sort of keeps going as to the reasons why creation exists to begin with. And I think when the time comes, when we're ready, it will become known to us certain reasons why it's all happening, things that are unknown to us right now. So I think that's interesting. And then another person said something really interesting too. I can't remember what it was. Man, help me out. This was just today too, and I was like, I said I was going to talk about it on the stream. Oh, okay. Well, okay, yeah, okay. So this person said that, well, God doesn't need anything. Like, why would God need anything? Like, God is everything, right? How could something that is everything need anything? True. Okay, I guess that's a great point. But we don't truly know if it does need anything or not. Even in my encounter, like seemingly face to face in my NDE, like the light did not reveal that to me if it needs something or doesn't need something. um I think that we don't know. Like, yes, it is infinite love, it is infinite potential, it is infinite creation, it is everything. But who are we to say that it doesn't need or want something? How the hell do we know? We're not it, we're not God, right? We're just fractals of it. So that's the point there. Light is looking for another light, or children who are like him. Yeah, so that goes to the element of free will, right? The choice between love or hate, right? And it's hoping you'll choose love so that you can return to it and become a creator along with it. Hence the creation of new souls with the whole weird ritual dance process thingy, and then creating universes with the angels, blah blah blah. Or you can be destructive too. You can become a minion if you want to and just destroy everything and be part of the yang or yin and yang as well. The choice is yours, whatever you want to do. Just like Putin and China or whatever want to nuke everything, possibly, they're going to be joining the destructive club. Oh, man. All right. Okay, I think I'm going to go here in a minute, but I'm very happy to see everyone here. I think that was awesome, and that was awesome that Emily called. I think that made the show. So that was really awesome. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm very happy with this stream, so thank you very much.